Darth Plagueis felt a powerful disturbance in the Force at the moment of Anakin Skywalker's birth, a disturbance he had never experienced before. Driven by curiosity and the ambition to expand his studies of the midichlorians, Plagueis began a long investigation to discover the origin of this unique presence. After years of research and patience, he finally discovered that the epicenter of this manifestation in the Force was a young boy living on Tatooine. Plagueis immediately began planning how the presence of this special boy could be useful to his research. Using his mastery of the Force and telepathic abilities, Plagueis established a subtle link with Anakin. He induced dreams and visions in the boy's mind, luring him to an isolated cave near his home on Tatooine. This cave was a place where Plagueis could hide from the Jedi's perceptions and manipulate Anakin's mind without interruption. When Anakin arrived there, intrigued by the voices and sensations he was experiencing, he met Plagueis, who introduced himself as a Force expert willing to teach him secrets that no one else could reveal. Plagueis began a series of conversations with Anakin, carefully planting the seeds of doubt about the Jedi and the traditional view of the Force. He spoke eloquently about how the Force was far more vast and powerful than the Jedi dared to teach, and said that Anakin had the unique potential to master this limitless power. With each encounter in the cave, Plagueis cultivated the boy's curiosity and desire, presenting himself as an understanding mentor and willing to help him understand his true nature. As he strengthened his bond with Anakin, Plagueis began to orchestrate the next step in his dark plan: to eliminate the boy's mother, Shmi Skywalker. He knew that pain and suffering could be used as a catalyst to manipulate Anakin. Plagueis plotted a meticulous attack, murdering Shmi and faking the attack as the work of the Tusken Raiders. When Anakin found his mother's body, he was consumed by a mixture of grief and hatred, just as Plagueis had predicted. Taking advantage of Anakin's vulnerability, Plagueis appeared to him again, this time offering words of comfort and encouragement. He told Anakin that the Force had granted him great power, and that he could use it to avenge his mother and bring justice to the galaxy. Plagueis skillfully manipulated Anakin's emotions, leading him away from the Jedi path and closer to the dark side. The promise of power and revenge began to take deep root in the young man's heart. After gaining Anakin's trust, Plagueis took him to his secret hideout, where he began experimenting with the boy's midichlorians. The Sith was surprised to discover that the more he extracted Anakin's midichlorians, the more they multiplied, doubling in number with each withdrawal. This unexpected reaction fascinated Plagueis, as it confirmed that Anakin was not only special, but a true singularity in the Force. He believed that the boy represented the pinnacle of connection with the Force. During the experiments, the Sith tested Anakin's limits, subjecting him to different stimuli to study the reactions of the midichlorians. He applied discharges of Force energy and watched as the midichlorians reorganized and multiplied, making Anakin even more powerful. Each test revealed a new potential within the boy, and Plagueis saw in him the opportunity to create a definitive weapon for his own purposes. As the experiments progressed, Plagueis continued to manipulate Anakin emotionally, reinforcing the idea that he was unique and destined for great things. He said that the Jedi would never understand or accept Anakin's true potential, and that only he, Plagueis, could help him achieve his destiny. Anakin, although still young, began to believe the Sith's words, especially when he saw demonstrations of power that he had never imagined possible. The bond between Plagueis and Anakin deepened every day as the boy began to show signs of transformation. He not only endured the experiments, but seemed to grow with them, becoming more confident and curious about the secrets of the Force. Plagueis saw this as a clear sign that his plans were working, and continued to feed Anakin's desire to explore the dark side. Finally, Plagueis concluded that Anakin was not just a scientific opportunity, but the perfect apprentice to carry out his plans. He decided to mold Anakin into the most powerful Sith in history, an unstoppable force that would allow him to dominate the galaxy. For Plagueis, Anakin was both a tool and an heir to his dark legacy. The young Skywalker was at the beginning of a journey that would change the fate of the galaxy forever. He told Anakin that he would become more powerful than any Jedi who had ever existed. And he wasn't lying. Anakin's training began in a dark and isolated environment, far from any distraction that could weaken his focus. The Sith, a master of manipulating the Force, began the process by teaching Anakin the fundamentals of the dark side. He stressed that absolute power could only be achieved by fully embracing emotions such as anger and hatred. Anakin, still resentful of his mother's death, showed an insatiable thirst for learning, absorbing every word and lesson with fervor. Plagueis was much more than just a Sith Lord. He was a brilliant mind, obsessed with understanding and manipulating the secrets of the Force. His masterful manipulation of the midichlorians allowed him to perform feats that defied the very nature of life and death, including the ability to create life and prevent death in a way that no Jedi or Sith had ever managed. In addition to his vast knowledge of alchemy and science, Plagueis was an unparalleled strategist, patient and methodical, able to manipulate galactic events in his favor. He mastered both the Force and intellect, balancing raw power and surgical precision in his actions. These qualities made him a perfect teacher to mold Anakin into something far beyond a simple apprentice, but rather a living weapon who embodied the full potential of the dark side. Plagueis knew that true power came not only from manipulating the Force, but also from understanding fear and pain. He subjected Anakin to intense tests designed to challenge both his physical and mental endurance. The boy was placed in situations of extreme stress, facing visions of his greatest fears. On these occasions, the Sith guided him, showing him how to channel his suffering into becoming stronger, turning his weaknesses into fuel for power. During the early stages of his training, the Sith Lord taught Anakin how to use the Force to manipulate objects and living beings with precision and absolute control. He was keen to demonstrate how the Force could be used to bend the will of others, a power that Anakin quickly mastered. The boy, already exceptionally talented, showed a natural ability for advanced techniques that surprised even his master. One silent night in Plagueis' dark hideaway, an unexpected intruder appeared. Darth Sidious, his former apprentice, now seeking to dethrone his master in order to claim his place as ruler of the Sith. As Sidious approached stealthily, Anakin, his senses heightened by the Force, perceived the hostile presence before Plagueis could react. In an instinctive and impressive move, the young man used the Force to throw Sidious violently against the wall, making it clear that he would not be a helpless victim. Plagueis, amazed at Anakin's skill, saw the threat posed by the intruder and immediately engaged Sidious in a fierce duel. The room was filled with lightning and explosions of energy as the two Sith Masters fought for supremacy. Realizing that he could not win at that moment, Sidious strategically retreated, promising to return. Plagueis, now more confident than ever in his apprentice's potential, strengthened his bond with Anakin, assuring him that together they would dominate all who dared face them. Anakin, for his part, felt the weight of his power grow, further cementing his loyalty to his master. With each lesson, the bond between master and apprentice grew stronger. Plagueis used a calculated approach, alternating between praise and rigorous challenges to shape Anakin's mentality. He instilled in the young man the idea that the Jedi were limited by their archaic beliefs, while the dark side offered freedom and infinite possibilities. Anakin began to see the galaxy from a new perspective, seeing the Jedi as obstacles to true balance. In one of the most impactful training sessions, the Sith took Anakin to a desert planet, where he faced extreme conditions and ferocious creatures. Plagueis explained that the hostile environment was a metaphor for the galaxy. Only the strongest survived. During these tests, Anakin demonstrated extraordinary strength, overcoming each challenge with fierce determination. He was beginning to internalize the philosophy of the dark side, believing that his strength was his birthright. In addition to the physical lessons, the training included intense meditation exercises, in which Anakin was guided to access the deepest layers of the Force. In these sessions, Plagueis showed the apprentice how to manipulate the midichlorians directly, a knowledge that set him apart from any other living being. Anakin was fascinated by the ability to alter the very essence of life, a power he could barely begin to understand, but already yearned to master. As the training progressed, the Sith began to introduce Anakin to ancient rituals of the dark side, teaching him to access secrets that had been lost to the Jedi. Anakin, driven by his curiosity and ambition, plunged headlong into these teachings, developing an ever deeper connection with the dark side. Plagueis, for his part, saw his apprentice transform into something beyond what he had imagined, with a potential that grew exponentially. The young Skywalker showed a unique affinity for combat techniques, quickly adapting to the fighting styles the Sith Lord taught him. He learned to use anger as fuel for every move, becoming a lethal and unpredictable combatant. Plagueis often challenged him in duels, and although the master always won, he recognized that Anakin was fast approaching his level. Despite the remarkable progress, the training was not without its conflicts. There were times when Anakin questioned Plagueis' methods and intentions, showing glimpses of his former morality. However, the Sith was skilled at redirecting these doubts, using skillful words to reassert his control over the young man. He reminded Anakin of his loss and how only power could ensure that he would never again be powerless in the face of pain. At the end of this initial training phase, Anakin was no longer the same boy who had been taken from Tatooine. He had become a force to be feared, mastering skills that made him unique even among the Sith. Plagueis, pleased with his apprentice's progress, saw in him the realization of his own goals. Anakin, on the other hand, began to believe that his destiny was to be something greater than any Jedi or Sith had ever been. The foundations of his ascension were solid, and the galaxy was beginning to feel the first echoes of his transformative presence. After years of intense training, the young Anakin Skywalker had become something beyond anything any being in the galaxy could imagine. Plagueis, satisfied with the results of his efforts, recognized that Anakin was not only his apprentice, but the embodiment of absolute power. Mastering the Force in ways never seen before, Anakin was capable of feats that surpassed both the Sith and the Jedi. He could manipulate midichlorians at will, heal mortal wounds, and even cause destruction with a simple gesture. Anakin's raw power and refined skill made him an unstoppable force. Plagueis decided it was time to test his apprentice's skills in the field. He sent Anakin to Coruscant, a bustling metropolis full of intrigue, to complete a series of missions designed to consolidate his rule and undermine the structures of the Jedi and the Republic. Anakin, now self-confident and ruthless, took on the missions with determination. Plagueis knew that these tasks would be crucial in shaping Anakin into a perfect strategist and executioner, a true emissary of the dark side. Anakin's first mission on Coruscant was to eliminate an influential senator who posed a threat to Plagueis' plans. Moving in the shadows, Anakin infiltrated the senator's office and, with surgical precision, used the Force to suffocate his victim before any alarms could be raised. Anakin's efficiency and lack of hesitation impressed even Plagueis, who was watching from afar through his connections in the Force. This success cemented Anakin's reputation as a perfect weapon. During these missions, Anakin began to realize the true extent of his power. He was able to manipulate not only the Force, but also the emotions and thoughts of those around him. On several occasions, he convinced political leaders to align themselves with Plagueis' interests without having to raise a single weapon. This more subtle use of the Force showed that Anakin was not only a warrior, but a born manipulator, quickly learning his master's lessons about control and domination. Anakin's presence on Coruscant did not go unnoticed by the Jedi, who began to sense a growing disturbance in the Force. Experienced masters such as Yoda and Mace Windu suspected that something dark was afoot, but were unable to pinpoint the exact source of the threat. Anakin, on the other hand, used this to his advantage, always moving one step ahead, taking advantage of the Jedi's confusion to advance Plagueis' plans undetected. One of Anakin's most challenging missions was to destroy a secret Jedi facility that housed strategic information about the Sith. The attack was orchestrated with precision and brutality. Anakin infiltrated the facility, silently eliminating the guards and destroying the archives before escaping without a trace. The success of this mission was a devastating blow for the Jedi and a triumph for Plagueis, who was beginning to see his dominance over the galaxy consolidated. Despite his rise as one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, Anakin still carried remnants of his past. He occasionally reflected on his mother and the promises of justice that Plagueis had made to him. These memories, however, were quickly erased by the Sith himself, who used his influence to redirect Anakin's thoughts towards his greater purpose. Plagueis knew that any emotional bond could weaken his apprentice, and made a point of constantly reinforcing the ideology of the dark side. Over time, Anakin became a feared figure on Coruscant. His deeds were told in secret, while he continued to act in the shadows, always one step ahead of his enemies. Plagueis saw this as the culmination of years of training, a sign that his apprentice was ready for even greater challenges. The relationship between master and apprentice evolved, with Anakin beginning to see himself as his mentor's equal, a transformation that Plagueis had foreseen and encouraged. By the end of his missions on Coruscant, Anakin was arguably the most powerful being in the galaxy. Plagueis, satisfied with the results, knew that the next step would be to prepare Anakin to take on an even greater role. The Republic was on the brink of chaos, the Jedi were weakened, and Anakin was ready to become the center of this new order. The galaxy would never be the same, and the dominance of the dark side was about to reach unprecedented levels. After his achievements on Coruscant, Anakin received from his master his title of Sith Lord and also his new name, Darth Vader. Palpatine, on noticing the movements of a mysterious Sith on Coruscant, sensed that her former master, Plagueis, was involved, possibly alongside the apprentice who had faced him years ago. Plagueis, for his part, knew that his disciple Anakin Skywalker, now called Lord Vader, was ready to execute the definitive blow that would leave the galaxy without the Jedi and also without Darth Sidious. The ever-calculating Sith realized that his and Anakin's combined power was overwhelming and that the key to victory lay in the raw and unprecedented power of his apprentice. Anakin's mission was clear: infiltrate Palpatine's office and eliminate him. Plagueis had meticulously worked on Anakin's hatred of Sidious, turning it into fuel for revenge and cementing his loyalty to his master. Anakin, who still carried the memories of Palpatine's attack on Plagueis, saw this mission as a way of taking revenge for Palpatine's attack. During the night, Anakin entered the Chancellor's office, emerging from the shadows like a silent predator. Palpatine, upon noticing his presence, immediately understood who the Sith in front of him was and the reason for his visit. The Chancellor tried to manipulate Anakin with promises of unlimited power, proposing that they rule the galaxy together. However, the young Sith remained impassive. Sidious, sensing Anakin's unwavering determination, tried to weaken him with scathing words, saying that his strength was insignificant in the face of his experience. In one sudden movement, he threw Force lightning at Anakin, who absorbed the energy with one hand and replied coldly, "Your lack of faith is disturbing." He then returned the energy in an attack so powerful that the room was enveloped in an explosion of light. The impact threw Sidious backwards, disfiguring his face. Determined to fight to the end, the Chancellor activated his lightsaber and leapt towards Anakin. However, the young Sith demonstrated absolute mastery of the Force, holding Sidious in the air by the neck with one gesture, maintaining a fixed, penetrating gaze that made Sidious feel the weight of his own despair for the first time. Coldly, Anakin declared, "Your empire will never exist." At that moment, Sidious realized that Anakin was not only powerful, but also had the ability to access his thoughts. As he faced Anakin, he understood that he was facing the most powerful being in the galaxy, a Sith who not only mastered the Force, but transcended its limits. In a subtle movement of his conscience, Anakin broke Sidious' neck, ending his existence. The Chancellor's death marked the first major step in Plagueis' plan to dominate the galaxy. The Sith watched from afar, satisfied with the outcome, aware that his creation, Anakin, was now the greatest force on the dark side. With Sidious eliminated, Plagueis instructed Anakin on the next stage of his plans: the elimination of the Jedi Order. He knew that the destruction of the Jedi was essential to consolidate Sith rule and ensure that no one would rise up against them. Anakin, now fully immersed in the dark side, was ready to carry out his master's will. Thus, the first phase of Plagueis' plan was successfully completed. The galaxy felt the impact of the Chancellor's absence, while the Jedi, still unaware of the fate that awaited them, would soon face the overwhelming force of Anakin Skywalker. The dark future of the galaxy was about to be realized, with Plagueis and Anakin leading a new era of darkness. Plagueis' plan to eliminate the Jedi Council began with an ambitious and ruthless strategy. to destroy Mace Windu, the master known for his strategic mind and combat skills. Plagueis knew that eliminating Windu would weaken the Order significantly, leaving the Council vulnerable and disorganized. The perfect opportunity arose when Windu, during an investigation into Palpatine's death, went to the Senate alone, without the company of other Jedi. Plagueis and Anakin infiltrated the room. As soon as Windu sensed the threat, he activated his purple saber with a quick, confident movement, preparing to face the two Sith. Plagueis immediately advanced, but was interrupted by a gesture from Anakin, who said firmly, "Please, Master, I'll take care of it." Plagueis, with a wry, confident smile, stepped back, letting Anakin take over. The young Sith, overcome by his own arrogance and belief in his absolute power, advanced directly against Windu, determined to defeat him single-handed. The battle between Anakin and Windu began with intensity. The sabers clashed in a show of light and sparks as the two warriors demonstrated their exceptional skills. However, Windu, realizing that he couldn't beat them both alone, shouted, "Padme, run!" Hearing this, Anakin looked towards the door and saw Padme for the first time. His heart stopped at the sight of the woman, whose beauty and presence awakened memories long forgotten. He remembered his mother, Shmi, who died in his arms, and the sense of protection he had felt for her. This moment of vulnerability made Anakin hesitate. For the first time in years, something awoke in him that wasn't anger or a desire for power. It was a deep and unexpected connection with the humanity he believed he had lost. As he stood paralyzed, Plagueis, sensing Padme's presence, used the Force to close the door to the room, preventing her escape. With a sarcastic smile, he began to walk towards her, his eyes shining with sinister intent. Anakin stepped forward, calling out, "Master," but before he could finish, Windu seized the opportunity and attacked Plagueis with all his might. A fierce duel began between the two masters, the sound of lightsabers echoing around the room. Anakin, however, remained trapped in his own thoughts, torn between loyalty to his master and the uncontrollable urge to protect Padme. It was as if his connection with the dark side was weakening. As the fight between Windu and Plagueis intensified, Anakin began to move towards Padme, but his approach caused her to back away, fearful. Padme, although clearly frightened, showed a determination that intrigued Anakin even more. He had never seen someone so vulnerable and yet so strong. His mind, full of conflicts, was trying to make sense of the situation, something that contradicted everything Plagueis had taught him. The duel between Windu and Plagueis began to tilt in the Jedi Master's favor. Using his unparalleled dexterity and connection to the Force, Windu momentarily disarmed Plagueis, but the Sith quickly regained control. With a strategic move, Plagueis took Padme hostage, grabbing her by the arm and using her as a human shield. He ordered, in a cold and implacable voice, for Anakin to file Windu. Anakin froze as he heard Plagueis' words. Looking at Padme, he saw the despair in her eyes. Something inside him broke. He realized that, for the first time, he couldn't follow his master's orders. His mind was filled with a whirlwind of emotions. A desire to carry out his master's orders, compassion for Padme, and a deep doubt about the path he had chosen. Plagueis' voice sounded like a distant echo, while Anakin struggled against himself. Padme, even in her vulnerable position, looked into Anakin's eyes, as if trying to say something without words. That moment was enough to shake the young Sith even more. He remembered what it meant to protect and care, emotions that Plagueis had tried to eradicate during years of training. Anakin began to question whether the power he had achieved really made him stronger or just emptier. Plagueis, sensing Anakin's hesitation, stepped up the pressure. "Do what needs to be done, Lord Vader," he shouted. But Anakin didn't move. He was caught between two choices that would define his destiny: follow his master and continue on the path of the dark side, or save Padme, embracing the doubt and humanity that were beginning to resurface within him. In that instant, Anakin realized that his journey was about to take a turn that would change not only his life, but the fate of the entire galaxy. Seeing Anakin's hesitation, Mace Windu understood that this Sith was different from his master. Despite his threatening posture, something in Anakin showed an inner conflict, a struggle between good and evil. With a firm but compassionate voice, Windu said, "Don't let him kill her." Those words awakened something even deeper in Anakin, who remained paralyzed while Plagueis watched him with a cold smile. Plagueis, realizing that Padme had awakened feelings in Anakin, made the decision to kill her in order to rekindle the hatred and anger in his apprentice, using it as fuel for his power on the dark side. The Sith didn't imagine, however, that Anakin's connection with Padme was unlike any other he had ever experienced. What Plagueis believed to be a weakness became the most powerful force Anakin had ever felt. Without hesitation, Plagueis drove his red saber into Padme's back. The woman's scream of pain echoed through the room, and Anakin was overcome by an overwhelming wave of emotion. The hatred that Plagueis had hoped would blossom in his disciple did indeed emerge, but it was accompanied by something unexpected. A feeling of loss, protection, and love that broke through all the barriers created by the dark side. Plagueis, satisfied, ordered, "Finish your goal, Lord Vader." Anakin turned slowly towards Windu, his expression charged with conflicting emotions. The Jedi, noticing the goodness still in Anakin's eyes, said sincerely, "There is still good in you, boy. It's time to do what's right." These words resonated deeply with Anakin, bringing back memories of his mother, Shmi, and the love he had felt for her. He realized that Plagueis had manipulated his grief for Shmi to shape him into a monster, but now he felt he could break free. Anakin turned to Plagueis, his breathing heavy and his mind filled with anger and pain. He closed his eyes, and the room was filled with an intense energy that seemed to engulf everything around it. In a cry of power and decision, Anakin unleashed a blast of lightning towards Plagueis. The surprised Sith tried to defend himself with his saber, but the force of the attack was so overwhelming that he was thrown violently against the wall. Without giving Plagueis a chance to recover, Anakin leapt into the air with impeccable precision, activating his lightsaber. As soon as Plagueis fell to his knees, weakened by the impact, Anakin delivered a swift and deadly blow to his master's neck. Plagueis' body fell to the ground. Just as in the original timeline, Darth Plagueis had been betrayed and destroyed by his apprentice. History was repeating itself, but with Anakin as the executioner of this new era. Mace Windu, still holding his activated saber, stood in silence, contemplating the scene before him. He had just witnessed the greatest display of power he had ever seen in his entire life as a Jedi. Anakin Skywalker was not just a warrior. He was an unstoppable force. Windu knew he was facing someone who could shape the future of the galaxy, but whose loyalty was completely uncertain. Anakin ran up to Padme, kneeling beside her. He placed his hand on the wound on her abdomen and closed his eyes. Windu watched, puzzled, not understanding what he was trying to do. After a few moments, Padme slowly opened her eyes. Mace Windu was completely stunned by what he was witnessing. Anakin had accomplished something that no Jedi or Sith had ever done before: bring someone back to life using the Force. Padme looked at Anakin, and the expression of fear she had previously had disappeared, replaced by gratitude and admiration. Anakin helped her up, and in silence, the two of them walked to the door. Before leaving, Windu asked, "What's your name?" Anakin paused for a moment, looked back and replied with a slight smile, remembering his mother. "Anakin Skywalker." Windu, realizing that something had changed profoundly in that man, said, "You did the right thing, young Skywalker." Anakin just nodded and left. Days later, while Padme was admiring the Coruscant night in her quarters, she saw Anakin emerge from the shadows. The two talked for hours, sharing stories, fears, and hopes. This connection brought them even closer. They began a relationship that culminated in a wedding on Naboo, where Padme became pregnant with twins. Love for Padme and their children transformed Lord Vader back into Anakin Skywalker, the man who brought balance to the Force, not only through his power, but also through the love that reconnected him to the light.